Hello there again, friends and fans. Raptor here. Welcome back to Wargame Red Dragon. What the deck? Good to have you back. So we're talking about Recon now. We're getting it on with Recon. I'm going to go ahead and talk about all the different types: wheeled, tracked, airborne, and of course the bipedal variant. Of course, infantry being a very important part of that as well in Wargame Red Dragon, as they almost have 1000% invisibility and a very good line of sight. But we'll start with vehicles first. The very basic being, as you're familiar with now, the M151A2 Mutt, which is a recon vehicle that is unarmed. The most important thing for recon, I would say, again, is speed, but also to the right here you see also stealth and optics. Those three things alone are very important, as obviously the faster you are, the quicker you can get to where the enemy is, and also get away from the enemy if they're attacking, and keep an eye on them, and also keep that line of sight. There's going to be no armor on this vehicle, and is available for all types of units. But and by the way, an interesting thing here too, a question I should ask is, so on the left here we have a little snorkel coming from the muffler of the vehicle all the way up to the top. I wonder what that thing on the right is, huh? Maybe some sort of radio communication thing, some sort of, I don't know, something to communicate with base. I don't know. But anyway, for 30 points, this is a very good optical unit, and I'm going to go ahead and just say very good, excellent, or good, depending on whether or not that's exactly what it is. So for a 15 extra points, you can get an M151A2 Fave, or Fav. This is my fave, though, as it has exceptional optics, and it does lack a little bit of speed, drops down by 10, but with exceptional optics and a few weapons on it, it can fire from the woods while enemy troops are approaching it, and you can make your getaway. It's really reminiscent of the, what is it, Rat Raiders, or the whatever from World War II, where the British would drive onto airfields and shoot at German aircraft and troops and everything else, and really screw things up. So you've got an M240 and an M2 Browning mounted on this thing. It's always been strange that in Wargame Red Dragon they have never animated any of the troops standing behind the weapons, but the reason that is because, you know, you'd have to animate a troop standing all the way over here to shoot to the right, and as you can see, it can shoot at 90 degrees from the forward firing position. So it would be a little bit more work for the developers, and of course I understand why they wouldn't want to do it. So anyway, the most important things to look at again here are the, I suppose you can even look at the autonomy and the fuel capacity as well, but the most important things are the optics and the speed, and of course also the point of the vehicle can also be important as well. Of course, recon can be counter recon or counter sniped by artillery, so keep that in mind. So moving up to Humvees now, we're going to go to the next wheeled variant. We have the M1025 Humvee M134. This is a Humvee that's mounted with the minigun on top of it. really dastardly weapon there. 90 kilometers per hour, good optics, so it's a good vehicle for that, and also has a pretty good fuel economy and capacity as well. Stealth is medium on this, and I should have mentioned on the previous two vehicles it was also medium. So with that, you have a 90 kilometer per hour, or yeah, 90 kilometer per hour unit, which is very good in terms of it's super speedy. Probably one of it's probably the fastest off-road vehicles for the Americans. Go ahead and look at the M1025 Humvee Mark 19. Basically the same thing with just a Mark 19 launcher on it. We'll go ahead and compare these two just so we can see. No difference in the vehicle itself, other than the weaponry, and the weaponry, of course, is a 40mm frag grenade launcher, 200 rounds on that. Wow, that is a very impressive unit. 90, I should say, suppression, rate of fire 63 rounds a minute. That's really impressive, by the way. That weapon there, that grenade launcher, will screw everything up. It will stop transport trucks, it will stop troops. It basically can stun, finish off, and or completely eliminate enemy troops and units. So don't underestimate this unit when you're bringing it onto the front lines. A very important unit. Moving on to more wheeled vehicles now, we have an old favorite of mine, the V150. Good optics, good speed, medium size and medium stealth. Fuel capacity is a little lower. It can't, of course, with it being a heavier vehicle, it can't go as far. But this unit can get to the field and back, and probably back to the field without refueling, depending on how far you're going. It has an M240 on top of it as well, Even though it shows 2 machine guns there, it only has 1 mounted. Maybe they'll change it in the future, but I doubt it because, I don't know, they'll just screw around with the accuracy of it to make up for that fact. But you can see this thing's completely covered in windows, and it seems like, yep, it's a Vietnam-era weapon, 1964, available for Marines, Airborne, Motorized support. So it's a very important weapon for monitoring the front, and does have some decent armor, 1 all around at current time. But again, this is the time in the video where I remind you that some of these values are subject to change, and we're not necessarily making a deck here, and we're not necessarily reviewing, you know, what's better than what. It's more about analyzing what sort of type. As I said at the start of the video, we're going over wheeled vehicles, tracked vehicles, aircraft, and then, of course, troops. So that will be the most important thing in determining whether or not you want to whether you want to bring the unit or not. It's very important, too, by the way, to keep in mind that weapons on these recon weapons are very important as well, as you can get some almost free kills. For instance, the 30-point V150 20mm has a 20mm cannon on it and an M60 on the top of it, and those 2 things alone, given with recon, can go hunt commands. If you somehow sneak a group of these into the back of the enemy lines and sneak up behind a command, 20mm can take it out, and for 30 points, that's quite an impressive feat. We have the LAV-25 Scout now, which is basically the LAV-25 with a it's basically a Scout. That's it. It's the LAV-25. That's a Scout. Though it does differ from the regular LAV. We'll go ahead and take a look at that, because a lot of these vehicles do have. Let's see. Right. I suppose we'll just compare it with this one. These, as you can see, it's pretty much the same vehicle, and there's really not too much in difference to them. We'll pin that to our menu here. So you can see there's not too much difference in these vehicles, other than that the optics are good on the recon and poor on the non. The stealth is also better. I don't know why. Maybe a better paint job. I don't know. Maybe there's some stuff installed to make the engine more stealthy. Not exactly sure, but the ranges and the weapons are exactly the same. So there's a slight difference, but you get a set of binoculars, that's going to be an extra 10 points. And you can see the vehicle also has little windows in it too, so that's that's their way of trying to make it more of a recon unit. And also you have 2 viewfinders on top. So very important there. And we'll move on to tracked vehicles. The tracked vehicles, we got the M113 ACAV, which I believe is Armored Cav, or Cavalry. And this is going to be your basic 15-point, wow, good optics on it, good speed. Really a good all-around vehicle that's loaded with weapons. So if you don't need to be there as fast, however, this thing is very fast, this can give you weapons that fire, wow, 2 to the sides and 1 to the front, an M2 Browning in the middle, and 2 M60s on the sides. So I would recommend that you use this against infantry the most. That's what I would say. You know, obviously it has weapons that can take out light vehicles and such, but if you put this in a forest and it starts to get attacked, or if you want to flank around the enemy, that's a good purpose. Oh, you know what? I should have also covered some of these vehicles that are amphibious too. I almost forgot. The Mutts are not, the Humvees are not, and neither is the actually, the V150s are, as well as the LAV Scout. I was going to say they're not, but I bet the LAV is. But yes, of course, the V150 is. Of course, it's designed. Wow, and that's very fast. 75 kilometers per hour in the water. That is turbo. That is absolutely incredible speed for the water. In fact, that's only 5 kilometers per hour less than what they do off-road. So that's very impressive. These vehicles here are amphibious. And I would assume as well that the M113 variants are going to be as well. So you have the ACAV and the M114A2, which is it's similar to the Command, except holy crap, look at that! It's got an HS-820 on it, a 20mm cannon. That is some heavy artillery on top of it. Not necessarily heavy artillery, but you get what I mean. It's a 20mm gun, so of course packs more of a punch than what a Browning machine gun would do. 500 rounds on that, accuracy of 15, so it's more of a suppression weapon. Suppression on it is 46, HE power 1, but it can travel at 60, has good optics, and 420 fuel capacity. It's an okay unit with a very nice armament on it, very good gun. Of course, the Mutt and the Fave are probably going to be maybe somewhat better, since they have, for example, the Fave or the Fav here. I'm going to call it the Fave because it's my Fave. Does have exceptional optics for 45 points on the ground, and that's pretty much the best optics so far. Just no armor on it whatsoever, so even the smallest artillery or mortar strike could kill this thing. So compared to that, this gets you a lot more armor and can keep you looking at the battlefield a little bit longer, especially since recon units can be exposed for a brief minute and then artilleried. If you want to have survivability with recon, keep in mind too, by the way, with naval ships out and or coming out, it's like playing two different types of games of chess at the same time. When you're fiddling around with your boats and your landing vehicles, it is hard to remember this one little recon unit out in the woods that might not be so important at the time. So if you need some survivability, this is the unit for you. Let's move on to the Sheridan Recon, or the M551 ACAV Armored Cav again. Speaking of Cav from before, this cavalry tank is good optics, 70 kilometers. I don't imagine that changing too much. Again, the speed will be relatively the same. It may drop by 5 or 10, or go up by 5 or 10, which actually would be pretty good. But as the previous two units, this unit as well is amphibious at 55 kilometers per hour. 2 armor all around except for on the top, and has a M2 Browning as well as a 152 millimeter heat round times 15 on it. This is impressive for taking out infantry. This is really good for taking out light vehicles and or just causing hell. Just think of it as kind of like a forward-firing artillery piece, because when this thing hits, it's really going to cause some damage and or panic, mostly. So that's a very good unit to bring to the front, in addition with other recon as well. The more guns you have firing at the enemy, the better. But if you can see them, that's the most important thing. So good optic on this recon. Very good. Let's move on to the M551A1, which is basically the same as the previous, except this has very good optics, and was made in '89. It also has armed with our favorite, the Shia LaBeouf missile, 7 times on that. It's of course not the Shia LaBeouf missile, but that's, hey, I love to give things nicknames, because I've never heard, what is Shillelagh? I don't know what that is, but we'll call it the Shia LaBeouf because of course that's intimidating. People are very afraid of him. So reload times and such are of course different here, because there's different weapons on the missile there, but the 2 main armaments are the same. Of course, with a different weapon, you're going to have a different reload time. But for what, 15? No, yes, 15 extra points. You do have a ATGM mounted on it as well, which can be really devastating, especially if well, with 40% accuracy, you could hit the side of some T-64s, and for 55 points, being able to see them, call in artillery on them, and then finish them off with either your ATGM unit or have a helicopter flying into the battle. It's very important. So these were tanks. These 2 are tanks, and well, of course, they're cavalry tanks, so they're a lot less lightly armored, a lot less armor on them. And of course, what you lose with armor, you gain with speed. So both of these do 70 and do 55 in the water, so that's pretty damn good. We'll move on to some more tracked vehicles here. We're going to drop down to the APCs, or the ACV. I guess this could be an armored cavalry vehicle too, except it's a CFV. So you got a fighting vehicle here that has 60 points. The M3 Bradley, we're going to go through the Bradley line now. This is a very nice basic weapon. For 60 points, really does a lot. You have a Bushmaster 25mm that can take out infantry. You have a TOW that can take out tanks. And it has 65 kilometers per hour. That's really good. That's really good. Very low fuel economy on this, so it can't go as far. But if you bring up some transports that are Bradleys or M113s along with this, this could be the crux or the kingpin of your entire attack. It could see enemy movements, it could engage light tanks, and with the 25mm Bushmaster, it can take out anything else that comes up to harm your infantry. There's also a little machine gun next to it too, but that's not as accurate. You don't get to use that now. But keep that in mind. If you're familiar with these military units, again, things are going to be different in the game than they are in actual real life. So keep that in mind. And we'll move up then to the M3A1, which has an upgraded TOW and no change to the chassis, other than, you know, there are some changes to the year it's available and such, because the weapons are different. So there's absolutely no change, it looks like, between these two, other than that one. The AP power on the M3A1 is greater. That's all that I can see. and the AP power on the tow and the accuracy, and basically it's a whole new missile loaded into the tube. So that's actually interesting how the Bushmaster between the Bradley, the original, and the Bradley M3A1, or I shouldn't say the original, but really the standard version here, even though there's not a difference in the Bradley Bushmaster main cannon, it still has one more AP, so I don't know, maybe that's just, I don't know, maybe with a computer it can spin the round just right, I don't know, who knows. But let's move on to the next Bradley, the M3A2, which is another step up. No difference between the Bushmasters this time around, and no change to the chassis other than armor. This is a heavily armored bad boy. 4 in the front, 3 on the sides, 2 in the back, and 2 on the top. This weapon's going to be here for quite a while, and for 90 points, that's a pretty big investment. That's like an M1 IP that you've purchased, or an M1 1P as we usually call it. This is a TOW 2 weapon as well, so 70% accuracy, and 26-25 on that, just as the other 2 previous TOWs. These weapons also are not amphibious, so these are going to be weapons that you're going to want to keep on the main roads until the very last minute, then get them off into the woods and hide them as they can travel 65. Very good optics on all of these, by the way, and that's very good as well. And no change to the fuel economy. So what's nice about this unit is, you know, the unit is pretty much the same, except for in terms of armor. When you get to the last one, everything's been upgraded, and then you get the better tow on it. Also, these can take out helicopters at 1,500 meters, so don't forget about that as well. That can be very effective in destroying enemy armor, and also just wreaking hell on those helicopters as well, if you're out of tow missiles. So that's it. That covers all the vehicles, at least for on the ground. We'll go then on to, we'll keep the infantry for last, and we'll start at the top and start with the AHIJ Cobra. This is a really cool weapon. This is new to Wargame Red Dragon, and this is basically like a heavy hog with some real modifications to it. It is a good optical helicopter that can travel at 280 kilometers per hour, and also is loaded with 40 millimeter frag grenade launcher, which means that, now keep this in mind, it can fire at helicopters at 525 meters. Very cool if you get close enough to enemy helicopters, and the accuracy though is so low that it might not even really be that important. Hydra 70 millimeter missiles on those, and also FFAR. Both area of effect, all area effect weapons. So this is really good for if you think the infantry is around, or you know there's a ton of infantry out there and they're out in the open. This is a good way to thin them out with the AH-1J. Okay, so the most important thing for helicopters too, by the way, which I may have failed to mention in previous videos, especially with infantry, especially with recon and commands, if when you're deploying your units, you put these over a forest or a body of water, but more importantly, though, I should say, forests are confirmed, but it could work in the future with buildings and such. If you select these or spawn these over buildings, or most I'm just going to say forests because I know that for certain, they will start hovering in the air when the game begins, which gives you extra seconds because the aircraft will already be in the air, so it doesn't have to go through the takeoff animation then going forward. It will already be in the air, thus it will go forward. The reason they did that is because some of the spawn zones are so small, you know, if in a 10v10 you run out of room to spawn stuff, people might be a little bit upset about that. So they allowed you to spawn aircraft, as you can spawn, you know, infantry and troops in the woods, especially your FOB as well, or even more importantly, your command in the woods. They allowed helicopters to be spawned above them, so keep that in mind. Now, speaking of new, oh boy, yep, the AH-60D Longbow, the M230 on it with the AGM-11-4C Hellfire. Damn, 16 of those bad boys, 150 points. That is a real investment there. Poor stealth on this, obviously, as it has, like, I mean, racks for days, though, bro. Look at that, man. 16 missiles on that, 370 kilometers per hour, and exceptional optics, as where the previous had good. This steps it up, medium size on this, which means it's a little easier to hit, especially with missiles. This was made in 1995. Damn, 1995. That is way up there. Look at that dome on top. It might be a little hard to see. I'll hide the grid here, and we'll hide the info of it. But that is a beautiful looking weapon system there. And 16 Hellfire missiles, which means that it's going to chew through tanks. Preferably, it would be great if you use these against T-64s. It gives you 16 chances to hit. But really, you only want to fire about 4 of them and then get on the move, because this is going to be a heavy or rather a high-value target, and not heavy armor on it or anything. But it can definitely get out of the way if it needs to. 70% accuracy on the missiles and 25 on the main cannon down there, the 30 millimeter with 1,200 rounds. Really a great weapon to not only... This really shouldn't even be thought as a recon weapon. Well, I should say it's more of a recon weapon than it is recon, and by that I mean you can basically go in with this weapon, find the enemy, destroy the enemy, and get out before you have to call in any other units. Recon is basically, a tank with a little whistle on it that you can blow when you see the enemy, when you're down at these sort of levels where you really can't do much with the armored cavalry, but the longbow can change the tide of battle, no problem. And no questions asked, because before you ask a question, it's going to blast your ass to hell with those hellfires. So that's it for that type of weapon there. Let's move on then back to kind of the more unarmed or lightly armed weapons. I guess they don't have any unarmed helicopters anymore. But anyway, we have the Kiowa here. Or the Kiowa? I call it the Kiowa because it's the key to winning any battle. That's the nickname for it. A minigun on the side, 7.62. So that's okay. Not bad. It could definitely take out some helicopters at 1050. That's 1,050 meters on the helicopters, and the same on the ground. Very small, very good optics. This is a hard boy to hit, and which it's really nice because it's since it's so hard to hit. Once enemy anti-aircraft starts to engage you and you start to move, if you're kind of using these weapons to scout, a lot of the time it's good to take these helicopters, especially the Kiowa or the Kiowa, to put it somewhere in the middle of the map on a mountain or on a set of trees, so that way it will hover the whole time and observe the entirety of the map, or at least to its maximum range. And this really is a good weapon for that. We'll move up then to the OH-58D Kiowa, which has a Browning on it and a 70 millimeter weapons pod, the F.A.Q. That's 7 rockets on it. So it's it's not really a good attack weapon, but with exceptional optics and a really good speed. In fact, the speed's upped by 20 kilometers per hour. That's right there. That's what you're going to want to buy to keep a watch over an entire flank. The Kiowa Basic is good for watching on the front lines, as you know the enemy is going to come right to you. But for 70 points, there's not a lot of risk if you're watching the flank, and also you can keep an eye on all enemy movements. And these can also spot aircraft as well. And of course, they're amphibious, which means they just fly. So no amphibious for the rest of the game, at least, or at least in terms of the helicopters. So this is going to be rather long because we have a lot more to cover here. So bear with me. We're almost done though as we move on to the OH-58D Kiowa. This is basically your little boy longbow, I guess you could say, little boy longbow here. 4 AGMs on this. By the way, if you call 2 of these helicopters out, I should have also mentioned that helicopters, when called out, can only travel in groups of 2, as where tanks and everything else can travel in groups of 4. This is some sort of thing for balancing or for the engine. I'm not exactly sure, but if you call in 2 of these Kiowas for 200 points, you have 8 missiles with 70% accuracy that can fire twice as fast, and really can do a number on advancing Red 4 tanks. So stealth on it is poor, of course, but of course these values on these weapons are to change as well. So it may be 70 today, could be 65 tomorrow, could be 100% accuracy or 10,000% range, depending on whether or not you're using it or the enemy. Always seems to change there. So that's it for the helicopters, at least for the attack helicopters, that is. It's now time to cover those Rangers. Shout out to Ranger Dobby there. So on to the Rangers then. We got 20-point Ranger group here that comes in a Humvee. These troops are a total of 5 men squad. Comes with the CAR-15, a carbine version of the M16, Carl Gustaf M12, and the M240. The Gustaf, by the way, is a Swede weapon. Really cool. It's a light anti-tank weapon. 525 meters on that. That is so much better than the Law. It's incredible. These troops, by the way, can travel at 25 kilometers per hour on foot too, which is actually faster than basic infantry. In fact, let's go back to the riflemen and take a look at them. They can travel at 20. So with that special training, they get a little extra speed out of them. Also, they have super cool boots, which are loaded with rockets. No, I'm just kidding. Come on now. So the optics on these are very good. This does not include the vehicle. But in this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Tell a friend too, by the way, and share as well. That's something that really helps us to grow. That was a good reminder for me and for you. But these troops here in the Humvee are ineffective. They must be unloaded in order to do their recon job or to engage with their weapons. You see there that troop armed with the Carl Gustav as well, the M2. So these units are very, very good. They're basically a regular infantry squad with a little special weapon with them. The M240 also stationary for these troops, and so basically they're a basic infantry squad with a little bit more training, a little bit better weapons, a little bit more points. They're very effective, and they can really do a number on the enemy. Humvee's good for getting them to the front line, unloading them, and flanking around the side, and since they have very good stealth, that means a lot. Very good stealth is a lot in this game, and keep that in mind. Going to move on then to the Rangers that are loaded in the Huey. You know the drill from the Infantry tab. It's the same squad, except they're loaded in a Huey. The Huey can travel at 225 kilometers per hour, as where the Humvee travels at 80. It's also armed with a machine gun on top as well, the M2. Going on then to the Black Hawk, 300 kilometers per hour on this, and it's got those twin M134 miniguns on them as well. So that's a really cool weapon. And a really good system in trying to get them around the enemy lines. 300 kilometers per hour. You land them. Get the Black Hawk out of the way too, because if the enemy does see a Black Hawk or a helicopter, they will realize that, oh, there must be some sort of infantry around there, and they'll start looking. Though this infantry squad has very good stealth, they can still be found. That doesn't make them invisible. And then, of course, the Rangers loaded in the CH-47C, the Chinook armed with the minigun as well, and 270. But what it drops down in speed, it does gain in strength or armor. I should say the Black Hawk has 6 and the Chinook has 7. So if you need to get behind enemy lines, you know they just have some really light AA and you can somehow get around it. The Chinook is the weapon for you, but keep in mind if you lose the Chinook and the Rangers, that's 20 plus 25, so you're not going to have a very good day. Alright, so then that's it for the Rangers. Let's move on to the baddest of badasses, the Navy SEALs. I've not seen Delta Force in this game, but we have seen Navy SEALs. Navy SEALs armed with an AK-47. What the hell? That does not seem right. Okay, so now's the time, everybody. We're down below in the comments. If I missed anything or if you have any special tips or tricks you want to share with everyone, please do so down below. Go ahead and ask your questions. Go ahead and give some extra tips. Go ahead and correct anything that may be wrong as of today. Not necessarily that I missed it, but because the things have changed. But this has got to be wrong. I don't think the Navy SEALs would use the AK-47, though Navy SEALs are probably trained to use every single type of weapon that they would encounter on the battlefield, as well as the Rangers and some other special forces or specialty troops. I'm not necessarily sure if that's correct. It may be, but I'm not necessarily sure if that is. But anyway, AK-47, that's not the real thing to look over. The Stoner 63, it's a CQC weapon. It's basically the SAW, basically, not necessarily. But the training on these guys are elite, and they can travel at 30 kilometers per hour, which makes them even more badass than the Rangers. So also they have very good optics, and well, there's something that of course I wasn't going to overlook. Their grenade launcher, 40mm frag times 24. My God, do these troops have stopping power. In a village or in a set of buildings, whether or not they're attacking or defending, these troops can, oh man, they're impressive. That grenade launcher, 455 meters is basically nothing, but if they get any closer than minimum range for the machine guns, which this is 770 and this is 525, this grenade launcher that's mounted on the back of that front troop's back, that's just going to absolutely devastate them. Advancing infantry or even light vehicles, I mean, that's just incredible. And they can fire that thing, I'm not exactly sure how many, boy, it looks like a lot of grenades that thing holds, but, and it's called 30 or 40 millimeter. This fires 40 millimeters, so that's an explosive power of 1, but the suppression is crazy. Basically, that can suppress, destroy, while the weapons of the machine guns are firing and finishing everyone off. Anyway, they do come in your standard Humvee, and if I didn't mention it, they have very good stealth and optics as well. So the training is what sets them apart, and their special weapons from the Ranger. Then you get the Twin Huey, which is the Marine type transport for the Navy SEALs, and it comes with the minigun on the side of it, and greater speed than the standard Huey. And of course we have the Prog, or the Frog. It's supposed to be the Frog, but we call it Prog just because, I mean, that's what it looks like, and that's just the easiest way. Of course, in the Rat Pack, when you play with people who speak different languages, sometimes pronunciations are different, so if someone calls it first and we all kind of say, it's not Prog, it's Frog, we we go with just, you know, the funny thing to remind the group that that's kind of the way we started with the name. So CH-46, very interesting helicopter, by the way. It was made in 1975. It's the predecessor, I suppose, to the Chinook, and has a minigun on it, I believe. Yes. So there you go. So that's it for Recon. Again, remember, if you don't bring out the Recon, your unit's going to be gone. So Recon is pretty important, and you need to keep it mobile. Helicopter Recon is very important. The light FAVs are important, and and keep in mind with the amphibious vehicles now, it may be more important to get a LAV 25 to go around an enemy bridge and see what they've got in the back, rather than just crossing the bridge that the enemy's waiting for. This will help you to find enemy units that are firing at you. It may not necessarily identify what the unit is, but it can definitely help you to destroy it. So that's it. Go ahead and give me those corrections, and go ahead and tell me what the hell's up with the Navy SEALs. Do they really carry the AK-47? I don't know. I'm not exactly sure. This must be obviously it's not an American weapon, and obviously, you know, it's probably just a placeholder for now until they get them the real weapon. Who knows? They could give them the CAR-15, but I'm sure Navy SEALs use something. Maybe the actually, since they're in 1975, maybe they'll get the CAR. Maybe just the M16. Don't know. Anyway, they're probably researching it, and you should do some research as well, and tell a friend as well by watching the rest of these videos. And thank you so much for the support. Bring the cornucopia of pain. This Raptor, until next time, reminding you to bring the cornucopia of pain, keeping the pimp hand strong, and we'll see ya. Bye.